Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're unpacking a fascinating and honestly highly specific narrative coming straight out of the spiritual channeling community. The central mystery we're exploring, whether our so-called cosmic parents are already here. And even wilder, according to these sources, are you already feeling the physical signs of their arrival in your very own body?
Okay, let's dive into this. The material we're analyzing today features prominent channelers who claim they're receiving direct messages from extra-dimensional beings. Now, these entities are suggesting that those strange, unexplained physical sensations so many people are having lately, they aren't just random biological glitches. Instead, the channelers claim there are literal cosmic architects behind these feelings. So what exactly should you be looking out for?
Tell me if this sounds familiar. Have you recently had this high-pitched ringing in your ears that your doctor just can't quite figure out? Or maybe a sudden tingling moving through your hands? What about a crashing wave of total exhaustion that suddenly lifts, leaving you with startling mental clarity? Well, according to the channel texts, if you're experiencing these things, it's not just stress or aging. The sources claim you are actively undergoing a genetic activation. Basically, something dormant inside of you is waking up. But who exactly is pulling the strings here?
Section 1. The Pleiadians. The sources describe ongoing contact with a group known as the ninth-dimensional Pleiadian Collective. And what's really fascinating here is this concept of Earth as a grand cosmic experiment. The channelers claim that thousands of different worlds donated their genetic material to seed humanity, and the Pleiadians were one of those primary donors. In this narrative, they're acting essentially as our cosmic parents, benevolent guides who are keeping a very close eye on our spiritual and physical evolution.
But get this, they don't just look like one thing. The channeled materials describe this incredibly diverse, extra-dimensional ecosystem. So while a lot of people report seeing blonde-haired, blue-eyed beings, often called nordics, the collective supposedly also includes positive reptilian entities, and even feline or lion-like beings. The sources also point to a connection with an ancient collective living deep inside our own planet, inner Earth beings, like an entity named Gar, who supposedly live under a dimensional barrier of fire. It sounds exactly like a Hollywood blockbuster, right? But to these channelers, this is our actual family tree.
Now you might be wondering, if these beings really are our cosmic parents, why haven't they just landed on the White House lawn already? Well, the sources claim they're deliberately holding off on mass physical contact for one very specific reason: human fear. Their core message is simple. You are a unique aspect of the divine, and you have way more power than you realize. A sudden, massive landing would just trigger global panic, which is the exact opposite of the higher frequency they're trying to help us achieve. They're basically waiting for us to level up first.
Section 2. Signs of activation and awakening DNA.
The channels present this mind-bending biological claim. They say mainstream science is only seeing a tiny fraction of our true potential. According to these sources, humans actually possess 12 strands of DNA, not just the 2 little strands we can observe under a microscope. And here's the kicker. Each of those 12 strands is supposedly connected to an entirely different dimension. Right now, triggered by incoming cosmic energy, those dormant strands are waking up from a millennia-long sleep.
And this brilliantly illustrates the internal battle we're supposedly facing right now during this activation. Imagine your body has 2 completely different operating systems. The first is the ego mind. That's our current 3D system programmed to survive through lack, limitation, and fear. The second is the heart center, a multidimensional operating system based on expansive connection and intuition. The channelers argue that true activation means you have to manually switch your daily operating system from that fear-based ego straight over to the heart.
Section 3. When are they arriving? A timeline of contact.
This all builds into a highly specific chronological timeline, and the sources, they do not shy away from exact dates. They talk about a period of frequency wars leading up to a massive shift. They predict a great rumble from inner Earth, causing geological events as a sort of purification phase. Then, they point to March 2025 as a major threshold for an energetic shift. But the absolute climax of these claims hits in November and December of 2025. This is when they claim interstellar ships will actually become visible in our atmosphere to those who have raised their frequency. And by the spring of 2026, they predict full visibility and integration.
However, there is a very stark, serious warning alongside this timeline. The sources claim that as these ships become visible, Earth governments, terrified of losing control over the population, might actually stage false military displays in the sky, pretending that humanity is under an alien attack. The channelers are absolutely adamant about this. True contact with these collectives is strictly benevolent, peaceful, and nonviolent. Any narrative of a cosmic attack, they claim, is just an illusion designed to keep humanity locked in that lower fear-based ego operating system.
Section 4. How we'll communicate using the language of light.
Okay, so if this timeline holds true and contact is near, a massive question remains. How on Earth are we supposed to interact with beings that exist in the 9th dimension? The sources introduce a concept called the language of light. Because these beings communicate telepathically and vibrationally, our traditional spoken words just aren't going to cut it. The language of light is described as this wild mixture of sound, sacred geometry, and cosmic data. Think of it kind of like a tuning fork. When you hear a piano play a note, it gives you a pure physical reference point to sing that exact same pitch. The channelers claim this light language acts as a cosmic recipe, completely bypassing your logical brain and speaking directly to your DNA to help it remember its higher frequency.
But before you can speak to the stars, you have to clear the static in your own mind. And the sources offer a really tangible, practical takeaway for this, brilliantly grounding a giant metaphysical concept into a daily mental health practice. They call it the 45-second rule. When a negative emotion like fear or anger hits, simply observe where it sits in your body. Notice your thoughts, sure, but do not judge them. According to the channelers, an emotion naturally wants to flow in and out of the body within about 45 seconds. If you hold on to it longer than that, you're actively locking it in by trapping yourself in a mental story. So, releasing this judgment is step 1 to clear communication.
Once you clear the static, you can actively manifest. The sources describe this as the alchemical marriage. It's not about gender, by the way, it's entirely about internal energy. First, you start with the divine feminine, holding space and vividly imagining the feeling of what you want. Next, the divine masculine takes over internally to pulse that specific frequency out into the universe. Then you switch back to the receptive feminine to actively observe the physical opportunities that suddenly show up in your life. Finally, you use the active masculine to step out and physically engage with those opportunities. It's a constant, beautifully balanced dance of creation.
Section 5. The dimensional split and a separation in reality.
So, what happens if half the planet masters this heart-centered operating system and the other half just remains locked in fear? The crucial point here is the concept of the dimensional split. The channelers suggest that time itself is literally just an illusion. They compare it to the Dewey Decimal System in a library. It's not a strict timeline, it's just a marker to help you locate a specific vibrational experience. Because of this, the coming change isn't some doomsday event where the world blows up. Instead, it's a split in frequency. Those who cling to fear and separation will simply remain in a 3D reality that matches their vibration. But those who shift to the heart center will ascend, essentially tuning their reality to the awe-inspiring frequency of a 5D new Earth.
This entire narrative ultimately hinges on one fundamental law, outlined by the sources: human free will. The Pleiadians and other collectives claim they will absolutely not force a landing or save humanity against its will. The decision depends entirely on you. If you invite them, they'll come. Visible contact requires a collective, heart-centered invitation from humanity. They're basically waiting for us to turn on the beacon.
Which brings us to the end of our explainer today. We've explored the claims of who the Pleiadians are, the symptoms of DNA activation, the highly specific 2025 and 2026 timeline, and the tools they suggest using to prepare for it all. Whether you view this as a literal roadmap to an incoming cosmic arrival or simply a fascinating metaphor for human psychological evolution, the question the channelers pose remains the exact same. If the skies begin to change and the frequency of the Earth shifts, are you ready?